What is Dead by Daylight? G'day guys, it's Jay here and welcome to my very first ever Dead by Daylight video. This is going to be kind of an ultimate beginner's guide for if you've never played this game before, or maybe even perhaps you're a newer player who's looking to learn some things if you're just getting started. So, that being said, let's get into it. Dead by Daylight is an asymmetrical survival horror game where 4 survivors are going to be matched up against 1 killer every match. The objective of the survivors is simple: repair 5 generators and exit the game, while the killer's job is to eliminate all 4 survivors in the game before they can do so. As a survivor, you'll choose one out of many different characters to play every single match, all of which have their own unique style and special perks that are different to one another and can give certain abilities to you and your teammates. Alternatively, as killer, you'll choose to play one out of many different characters in the game, which they too also have their own set of unique perks and abilities. You also have some familiar faces in here too, which you might see like Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, Ghostface, and even one of my favorites, the Demogorgon from Stranger Things. But for now, let's talk about playing Survivor. So as I mentioned earlier, there are many different characters to choose from in the game, but the 4 characters that I would highly recommend as a new player would be either one of these 4: Meg Thomas, Bill or William Overbeck, David King, and Claudette Morel. Each one of these survivors has a little bit of a backstory and lore if you'd like to read that, if you want to know more about them, but most importantly, they each have 3 unique abilities that you can unlock. Claudette here, for example, has perks that make her more of a team player, specializing in healing herself and also her fellow teammates. This is why I highly recommend playing her when you first start playing out, because you're going to need to be doing healing a lot in this game. And I mean a lot. But don't do it in the corner of a map. Now, to unlock these abilities, as a killer or survivor, you need to head on over to the blood web section of the desired character, which is where you'll spend blood points located at the top right hand side of the screen. Think of these as your currency in Dead by Daylight to use to unlock perks and items and offerings. The blood web can be quite daunting when you first start playing. It definitely was for me, so just know that each time you clear a level of the blood web, you'll unlock a few items and other things, but the main thing is to look out for the perks that you need to unlock. When you first start playing, each character will begin at level 1, and after spending some blood points to unlock some perks and items, you'll level them up over time. Your first 4 levels allow you to use 1 perk by default. You get your 2nd perk slot at rank 5, your 3rd perk slot at rank 10, and then finally your 4th perk slot will be unlocked at rank 15. You will eventually begin to learn what each perk does and which one you enjoy and which one you don't, but for starting out, there's real no wrong answer, so I suggest to start using the perks that each character has specifically to just choose and play and get an idea on how they work and just get familiar with them while you begin to play. The section above the perk slot is your item slot. This is where you can choose specific items to use in a match that will do certain things. So toolboxes, for example, will help you repair generators. Med kits allow you to heal yourself and fellow teammates. Flashlights are used to shine a light in the killer's face to try to stun them, but for now I wouldn't worry too much about that. Choose either a med kit or a toolbox and then equip some add-ons that will enhance that item's usage. And again, there's no real wrong answers when first starting out, so just experiment a bit with them just to have a bit of fun. The final section of the loadouts are the offerings. These are kind of a bit, again, not really beginner friendly, but they're normally used to increase blood points given in a match or to kind of give certain bonuses or boosts throughout a match. So now that we've covered the basics, let's take a look at what to actually do in each match. As a survivor, when you first load into a map, your objective is quite simple. You want to look for the closest generator and begin repairing it. The amount of generators to repair is located down the bottom left hand side of your screen, and each match there are 5 generators total to repair. Once you've found yourself a generator, walk over to it and begin hitting the action key and you'll begin repairing the generator. You'll notice a repair progress bar down the bottom. The longer you fill this bar, the more the generator is repaired. While repairing a generator, you'll be faced with skill checks to make sure that you're keeping alert. Hitting the little white space will grant a small bonus to repairing, and the normal space in between will just keep the generator repairing as normal. Whenever you miss a skill check on a generator, it'll backfire and suffer a small explosion, causing slight damage to the generator and also alerting the killer to where you are. letting them know that you're working on that generator. So be careful when this happens, as the killer might make their way to the explosion noise to either find you or come over to damage the generator. The killer can damage your generator by hitting it, causing it to lose progress that you've made, and means that you have to make up for lost time. You can identify a damaged generator by seeing sparks and smoke coming out of the gen. Simply begin working on a generator again to stop it from regressing. Once you've finished repairing the last generator, the auras of the exit gate locations will show up on your screen, indicated by the glowing panels that you must make your way to and begin to use to open up the doors to escape. So also be alert when this happens, as the auras only show up for a few seconds, so then it's up to you to remember what direction they were in. Once you've found one or both exit gates, walk up to the lever and hit and hold down the interaction key to begin opening up the doors. This will take up to 20 seconds to open, and the 3 red lights above the lever will begin to light up, indicating it at the 5, 15 and 20 second mark to help counting the time it takes to open the actual gates. Once you feel the progress bar all the way, the doors will open and reveal the way to exit the match. Be careful while doing this, as the killer also knows the location of these exit gates and will most likely be on their way to try to stop you from exiting. Simply run out of the exit gates to leave the match and survive against the killer. If you do this right, congrats, it means you've escaped. There is, however, one other way to escape a match in Dead by Daylight, this being something called the hatch or the trapdoor, which can be found and used to escape once all of the generators are complete and you're the last survivor left alive. You can identify the open hatch by its humming sound and dark smoke-like aura coming out of the opening. To use this method to escape, simply run up to the open hatch and hit your interaction key to jump down into the exit hole. There are many different variables to cover with hatch escapes, such as using an item known as a key to open them, perks and items to use to be able to find the hatch earlier, and the killer being able to close the hatch to prevent escapes. But that might be for another video, however, because this is just for the basics of Dead by Daylight. So all you need to know for now is that it's an option to consider when trying to look to exit the match. So that covers generators and exit gates. Let's move on to the other important element of being a survivor, which is what to do when being chased by the killer. While doing the main objective as a survivor, repairing the generators, the killer's job is to stop the survivors from doing exactly that. This means that while working on a gen, the killer is going to look for you or your teammates and begin chasing you down so they can try to eliminate you from the match. This begins what's called a chase, where the killer is going to try to use whatever weapon or ability they have to try to down you. You will know when a killer is making their way to you by either seeing them or hearing a loud heartbeat noise, which will get louder and louder as the killer gets closer to you. This heartbeat is known as the killer's terror radius, and the louder the heartbeat, the closer the killer is to you. Once the killer begins chasing you, the heartbeat will be at its loudest and chase music will also start playing. This means that you are the one in the chase with the killer. Their objective is to try to smack you to the ground by getting you injured. The killer has to hit you 2 times for you to be stopped. The first hit puts you into the injured state, and the second hit will put you into the down state. When this happens, it means that the killer has successfully downed you, and this begins the second part of the killer's objective, putting you on a hook. So once you're downed, the killer will walk over to you, pick you up, and take you over to a hook which you will be hung up on. While this is happening, you can use a struggle action to try to wiggle off the killer's shoulder. You can see how many times you or other teammates have been hooked by the tally counter that's next to your avatar and name. While you're on a hook, there are a few ways to get off of the hook, but the only thing I want to focus on in this video is the main way to get off the hook, your other teammates. There are 3 stages to being on a hook. The first is when you're hooked for the very first time, you'll notice a progress bar underneath your player icon that will begin to deplete. It is your teammate's job to try to get you off the hook before that progress bar hits halfway, which will bring you to the second stage of being on a hook, the struggle stage. Once your hook bar reaches halfway, or you've been hooked for the second time, you will enter what's called the struggle state, where the entity will spawn in dark spider leg-like auras that will try to attack the player on hook to try to eliminate them. It is then up to the player on the hook to struggle to prevent this from happening by periodically making skill checks to try to delay this. If you aren't saved by a teammate while struggling and your bar fully depletes, this is where third stage of being on a hook comes in, being completely eliminated. Once your bar depletes while you're on a hook, you're taken out of the match and engulfed by the entity. Alternatively, when you are the healthy teammate and someone else is on hook, it is you and your teammate's job to help rescue your teammate from that hook. Simply make your way over to them and hit and hold the interaction key to unhook a player safely. So it might be a little confusing with all of this in mind, but try to look at it this way. Dead by Daylight essentially becomes a match of cat and mouse between the killer and survivors. Every time the killer comes after you, you want to run away from them, trying to gain as much time as you can for your other teammates so they can do more work on a generator. Again, there are many more points and elements to this whole video that could be covered in more depth as a survivor, such as looping the killer, dropping pallets, scratch marks, and other ways to continue a chase and perks and things like that, but I want to keep this as simple as possible for this video. It's for brand new players after all. You're going to get caught in this game 90% of the time, so don't feel bad or frustrated when this happens. There's a lot of experience and time that goes into mastering this element of the game, but when you're just starting out, it's all about having fun. So don't worry about how many times you might be caught by the killer or thrown on a hook. It's gonna happen, and it's just all about practice. The other thing I wanted to go over for Survivor before we move on is healing your teammates or yourself after you've been injured by the killer. This is situational and should only be done when it's safe to do so, but if you're injured and the killer isn't chasing you, you can find another teammate who can begin to heal you. Alternatively, on the flip side of this though, if you are the one who needs to heal a teammate, simply begin hitting the interaction key to start healing them. This will take some time, just like repairing a generator, and you'll also be faced with the same skill checks that you would when repairing a generator. So the same rules apply here. If you successfully hit a skill check, you'll keep healing as intended, and hitting the small white bar of the skill check will grant a small boost in the healing progress. Missing a skill check while healing will hurt your teammate and make you lose some progress on the healing progress bar, but it also alerts the killer that you've just missed a skill check, so be careful of that. You can also heal yourself using a med kit, or if you have Claudette Morel's perk, self-care. There is more I could cover in future videos for more advanced tips and tricks on perks, or this part of the game for beginners just starting out, but I feel like this is all you need to know to begin to understand the basics of being a survivor. Work on generators, heal and unhook your teammates, and run away from the killer while being chased. More so, however, just try to enjoy your time while learning this game. Try to have fun with it. It is a game after all, and it will take time to get good at, so just remember that and just try to focus on having a good time. Again, without going into too much more detail, that covers the bare minimum basics of playing Survivor. So now let's talk about what to do as playing killer. Playing as killer is the other side to Dead by Daylight. You will be playing by yourself against 4 survivors. So we've already covered most of the basic mechanics of Dead by Daylight when we went over what to do as survivor, so there's not going to be as much to go over here as killer, since much of what I've already talked about can apply to playing killer. We'll get into what I mean by that in a minute, but for now let's talk about the actual characters and their perks and add-ons. There are quite a lot of characters to choose from when wanting to play killer, but the base game without any DLCs will only allow you to have access to the Trapper, Wraith, Hillbilly, Nurse, and Huntress. There are 2 killers called the Hag and Doctor, however, that are actually included if you buy the game on some consoles. PlayStation and Xbox versions of the game are more expensive than Steam, for example, so you can get a few DLCs for quote-unquote free. But for the sake of this video, we're only going to focus on the basic killers that you get with the base game. Now that being said, the 3 killers that I would recommend to begin learning Dead by Daylight is Trapper, Wraith, and Huntress. The reason being is that these killers are quite quick to learn and don't require much thinking when it comes down to the basic gameplay of just hunting down the survivor. Each killer has their own perks and abilities similar to survivors again, so you can look into these by reading the info given on each character to read a little bit of lore and read up on their perks. Wraith, for example, is a basic melee killer with a club for a weapon, but his ability makes him turn invisible. So while he's invisible, his movement speed is dramatically increased, which makes him easy to run around the map and look for survivors. The Trapper is also another melee style killer with a machete for a weapon, and his ability though is to be able to place down bear traps all around the map to try to snag the survivors in, hence playing into his name, the Trapper. Similar to the overview of Survivor, you're going to need to unlock the perks for Killer by heading over to the Blood Web and spending blood points on add-ons and perks to level up each individual character. The same idea applies here to Killer as it did to Survivor, so your first 4 levels of Killer you'll be able to use 1 perk by default, unlocking your next other perk slots at rank 5, 10, and 15, allowing you to then run a total of 4 perks. I'll say the same thing that I did with the survivor perks and blood webs, which is just there's really no wrong answer when first starting out on what perks to choose and use on each killer. There's going to be a mix of unlocking teachable perks from individual and specific characters, but also universal perks that you'll unlock on every killer. Try out each perk every killer has, as they're all unique in their own way, and it's going to allow you to choose and experiment to mix and match to find what you enjoy using. After you've unlocked some perks and add-ons on a selected killer, let's talk about their loadout. Select 1 to 4 perks of your choice of character and universal perks, using whatever you'd like to begin learning them and their basics. After that, let's talk about add-ons. Add-ons are used for each killer to enhance or change their abilities and attacks. The Trapper, for example, has an add-on called the Trapper Bag, which allows the Trapper to begin the game with 1 extra bear trap and also allows him to carry 2 extra bear traps. By default, if he wasn't to use this add-on, he can only hold and carry 1 bear trap. So this is just one example on how an add-on can increase a killer's ability. Each killer has the room to hold 2 add-on slots, and they're all specific to each individual killer. So again, just go through these at your own pace and choose whatever you think sounds fun or looks cool. When learning how to play, there's no wrong answers here. It's all about learning, and there's no better way to do that than to learn it at your own pace. There is a lot to cover here and a lot of tips and suggestions for perks and add-ons that may be for a future video, but for now, choose whatever add-ons and perks you'd like, and let's get into a game. The very first thing that you'll notice when you begin a game as a killer is going to be the perspective. When you play as killer, you're in first person, and when you play as survivor, you're in third person. This might take some time to get used to if your first few games has been as survivor, but it won't be that big of a deal, and it's not going to take you long to feel comfortable with. Usually each match begins with the killer being spawned in on the furthest side of the map to the survivors, and means that the best thing for you to do when you first load in is head to the opposite side of the map that you're on and begin looking for survivors. Once you've found 1 or multiple survivors, begin a chase with them, and you're going to want to do the same thing that we've talked about before earlier in this video. You want to get them injured, down, and put on a hook. I will say the one thing that you'll notice more than anything while beginning a chase with a survivor as a killer is the red stain-like marks that survivors will leave behind them while running. These are called the scratch marks, and is what is left behind when survivors begin sprinting or running away from a killer. There are 2 things that you need to know about this. 1, scratch marks will only show up when the survivors sprint or run, and will only usually last a few seconds before slowly fading away. So it's a good way to keep track of a survivor when chasing them around hallways or objects. 2, if a survivor slowly walks or crouch walks around, they will not leave any scratch marks behind them, which can make it a little bit tricky if a survivor uses this to try to trick you in a chase. Keep this in mind while playing survivor as well, but know that you can't see scratch marks as a survivor, only as a killer. If a survivor is injured from one of your attacks, they'll begin bleeding, leaving trails of pool and blood behind them as they run. So even if a survivor isn't sprinting, trying to hide their scratch marks, they will still leave pools of blood behind them, which can be used to track survivors as well. They will also make loud noises while hurt and breathe heavily, which you can hear quite loudly, especially if you're using a headset. Use this as another advantage tool when looking for a survivor. After you've chased down a survivor and downed them, your next step is to pick that survivor up and take them to a hook. There are many different hooks scattered across the map, and they'll be highlighted in a red aura that you'll be able to see through walls and across the map as killer. So carry a survivor over to one of those hooks, press and hold the interaction key, and throw them up onto a hook. Each survivor will have to be hooked 3 times in order for them to be eliminated. So your aim is to try to do this to all 4 survivors before they finish repairing the generators and make their way to the exit gates. I mentioned earlier in this video that killers in Dead by Daylight can kick or damage generators that survivors are working on. I would usually recommend looking to do this after you've hooked a survivor and go looking for the next. If you see a generator that is being worked on or has made some progress to repairing it, walk over to it and again hit and hold the interaction key to damage the gen. You have to finish the full animation of kicking the generator for it to actually work, so be careful not to walk away too early. Just keep in mind that damaging a generator can be important as killer to regress any progress made to repairing one and help slow the game down so you can hook more survivors. But that's it, that's the main aim of the game. Chase survivors down and try to hook them, all of them. There are perks and other variables that can help with slowing generator progress down, but I'm not going to be covering that in this video. Without going into further detail, that's going to be the basics for Killer and Survivor in Dead by Daylight. The point of this video has been to try to help brand new players to Dead by Daylight understand the basics of starting out, and to hopefully also give a detailed enough explanation for beginners to understand how the game works. There is a lot to learn in this game, and that's why I wanted to make this specifically for beginners. We can go over a lot more detailed and advanced tips for both Killer and Survivor in a future video. If that's something you guys would like to see, please let me know down in the comments down below. I just hope this video did a good enough job to help brand new people to the game with some beginner tips and answer any questions newer players might have had that they may not have been able to find answers to yet. Dead by Daylight is a unique game and can be quite daunting when first starting out. There are many different ways to learn more about this game, such as other great content creators here on YouTube, watching some live streams over on Twitch, or joining some Discords to talk or meet other players. This is where I'm going to be a little bit cheeky and let you guys know that I myself do a lot of Dead by Daylight streams over on my Twitch channel, and if you'd like to ask me any questions about this video, about DBD in general, feel free to come hang out. The link for that is going to be in the description of this video. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this, and let me know if you have any other tips or advice for brand new players down in the comments. And if you found this video useful or enjoyed it at all, please let me know by leaving a like. I'd really much appreciate the feedback on this video, as this is my first time making any kind of video like this. I do plan to start uploading some more Dead by Daylight content here on this YouTube channel, and I'm going to be releasing the first stream highlight video next week, which are a lot of fun to watch, so keep an eye out for that. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys in another video or over on my live streams. I hope this video helped, and welcome to Dead by Daylight.
Yeah, I'm down for the long run now. Red Corvette and my drop top down. Calling up my digits in my Motorola, and I'm speeding like I robbed someone. Falling and I'm a whip